Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. ZX80 or Z80. Anybody any ideas of what a Z80 is?
Yeah, it was a computer.
No.
PlayStation.
No. Z80 was a central processing unit. It was put into computers.
Okay.
ZX81, well, ZX80 first, Clive Sinclair. First computer sold for under £100. Right, that computer was a real scene breaker because up until then computers were mini, that's a mini computer, and the mainframe which would be the size of this room. And, you know, you can't take them home with you. So, Sinclair came up with the idea of something small. Now, before he did the computer, he did kits for mini or micro radio sets. He did a black and white micro television, if you ever remember that.
Yes.
Yes. And an LED watch, which you built. So it's all black with red LEDs, and the batteries lasted hardly any time at all. But Z80 is what we're talking about. So Z80 and the ZX81. 81 was a nicer case. It was black. It had a bit more memory in it, but it had the problem that all of the early computers had. How do you get them to have a program? They didn't have hard drives like we've got. And so what they did was plug in a cassette machine. And so the cassette machine would have the program on it, and you'd start it up and it would load it into your computer, and then you could use whatever was on the tape. Problem. The instructions about doing that weren't very clear. You're supposed to put the cassette in, turn it on, and adjust the volume so that the computer would listen to it without getting distortion. If it was too loud, it wouldn't hear it properly, and so it wouldn't load it. If it was too soft, it wouldn't pick it up. So that was a bit of a nightmare. Next one, Sinclair ZX80. Now that was a not ZX80, Spectrum, doesn't matter my brain. ZX Spectrum. Now the Spectrum had colour. It actually had colour in it, and it had a choice of colours and graphics. You could plug a television into the back of it because it had a modulator, and so you had a proper screen rather than one of these little ones, a proper screen that you could look at and play Pac-Man. Oh yes, you could play Pac-Man on it, brilliant, and other games. Now this was not very good really. It was very primitive compared to what there were around. IBM were looking at it, and IBM thought, hang on a minute, Sinclair has sold 5 million Spectrums. What are we doing? Well, they had a computer. It wasn't really a personal computer because it was like in a huge box. But they decided to go for a proper personal computer. Box, that size. About that thing. Brilliant, because in it you had a hard drive and a 5 1/4 inch floppy drive. That's why they're called floppies, because they do flop. 3 1/2 inch drive is rigid. South Africa, they call them stiffies. Interesting. So you've got your way of putting data in, you've got your way of storing the data. It had colour on the machine, beautiful. Really good keyboard. That's the trouble with Sinclairs, they were not very good keyboards. The membrane wasn't very good, but it worked. The XT machine, as IBM called it, wasn't bad. Not good by today's standards, but it wasn't bad. They then did the AT, which was a lot better. The AT machine had a thing called an EGA card, graphics card. EGA meant you had up to 64 colours at any one time. 64 colours! Absolutely brilliant. Never seen anything like it. When I got my first AT, I could not believe what I was seeing. Now, for any of you who understand computers, hard drive 20 megabyte. That's what I was using. What I'm using today? I've got 6 2 terabyte drives in my computer. You know, that is just ridiculous. Memory, oh no, come on, memory, I had 640k plus a little bit more extended memory that gave me 1024. 1 megabyte basically. 1 megabyte. What have I got in my computer? 32 gigabytes. Fantastic, isn't it? Yep, so we go on from AT into the next phase of computers. Z80 chip was used throughout alongside the Motorola, but they were really not very good. They just didn't have the power. You needed much more bandwidth in them. You needed to have a greater bus capacity and all those sorts of things. And so what they did, they started using other people to produce them. Intel, you've heard of Intel, they produced chips. So did AMD, and who else was doing them? Motorola, that was it. Motorola was another one that was doing it. These were superb processors. In fact, on my laptop, it's an i7 Intel processor, which is incredibly fast. So IBM were doing this, moving up, but management in IBM were pretty naff. They really didn't see what they could have done. Other companies came along. You know, Amstrad was chucking out computers. Motorola had some. There's a lot of companies in China and around there that were putting together stuff, TRS, and you had a situation where loads and loads of computers were being produced using pretty naff chips. Then they got their hands on the Intel chips, they got their hands on AMD, and they made incredible computers. And that's what's happened. Z80, which started it all for our home computers, has now reached the point where you've got a little laptop or tablet or a smartphone with incredible computing power, far more than any spacecraft ever had, and you've got it in your house. So we've gone from this size computer, the room, down to in your hands, and I've put mine in my pocket. So that is more powerful than the one that filled this room. You know, it's absolutely crazy.
Thank you, Brian.